The Gospel of Gold by G.S. Lewis. Chapter 19. Mother to None. Gold stood before a pair of mahogany doors, sporting decorative brass handles. Taking a deep breath to steady his shaken nerves, he stretched forth both arms and pushed. The double doors turned aside, revealing a wide room with a single large desk in the back. A man sat behind it, leaning into a microphone on the desktop, practically throttling it with his fingers. His face was red under his fedora, and spittle flew from his mouth as he snarled out words. "I don't want to hear you complain! Just do a good job to—" He paused mid-sentence and squinted at the intruder who had just barged into his office. With one hand, he flicked a button on the microphone, then rose out of his chair with an indignant frown. "Who are you?" Gold forced up a nervous grin. "I might ask you the same. You're not the radio tower's director, but we've met once before." He tapped the black and gold cap on his head. "Think." The false director squinted at him again, and his irritated expression gave way to horrified recognition. "Oh no, it's you again, Gold!" "That's right." Gold hefted a Pokeball in his hand. "It's just us now. I've thrashed all your rocket grunts downstairs, and I want to know where you stashed the real director." "This isn't me. This isn't real." "Sure." The imposter stepped around the side of his desk, plucking a Pokeball off his own belt and widening it with a predatory smile. "I'll tell you," he said with mock sincerity. "But only if you can beat me! Wheezing, attack! Go, Baku!" Both Pokeballs flashed open, and two Pokemon materialized at the room's center. On the false director's side floated a purple, two-headed gas bag that belched smoke. On Gold's side stood a blue and yellow ferret-like creature, whose neck was colored with flames. A Typhlosion, the final form of Cyndaquil. "No!" Gold pulled and felt a burning cold, a pain as though he was struggling to detach from his own flesh and body. It was an enigmatic sensation. The closest thing he could have compared it to was having his skin stuck to frozen metal and tearing it away. Still, in spite of the excruciating toll it took upon him, he struggled and resisted. The scene unfolding in front of him slowed to a standstill, and he himself gazed down on it from overhead, detached and independent. Until a moment ago, he had been inside Parallel Gold. He had been Parallel Gold. "I refuse to watch another second of this," he thought fiercely, squeezing his eyes shut. "This facade is not my life, and it never was. I'm not some fantastically confident, amazing Pokemon trainer. I'm just a boy in jail." He set his teeth. "And Cyndaquil is dead. He's never coming back." The white cement walls of Gold's cell reappeared around him. He did not remember opening his eyes, but it seemed he had fallen asleep. There was one major difference, however. He was no longer alone. A darkly clothed human figure crouched in the corner by the door, facing away from him. As soon as he noticed it, the visitor rose and stood, as if aware of his gaze. The long mane of red hair atop its head fluttered as it turned, and Gold beheld a pair of silver eyes that met his with loathing. He would know those eyes anywhere. "How did you get in here?" he whispered, his voice shaking.
"I am Silver,"
responded the thing in Kammen's flesh, in a tone that declared the question settled. It continued to pierce him with its frosty stare. "Guards!" cried Gold, tasting fear in his mouth as he hammered on the wall. "Please help! There's someone in here with me! Anybody!" For how much longer he shouted and pleaded, Gold could not tell. When at last he had worked up the courage to look back at his enemy, Silver stood by the door, motionless. There was no hint of a smile on his face, but Gold detected a subtle air of amusement about him.
You still haven't figured it out?
He asked.
Even if they came, it would not be to help. They are rockets.
His eyes narrowed.
You knew. Your little friend warned you, but had he not, I myself still have. That vision of your alternate self, fighting the false director in the rocket radio tower takeover. Where do you think it came from?
Gold gripped the wall as he stared at Silver, the realization dawning on him. You, he breathed.
Me.
Silver snapped brusquely.
I see what can be, and what will be. Team Rocket is everywhere, but they are most heavily infested in this rat nest you call a city. They will be ready to move on the radio tower in a matter of days.
You've been messing with my dreams! Gold exclaimed, interrupting him as more revelation became plain to him. The one I had of the Pokemon daycare, and the one where I fought Bugsy's gym, those were you too! He cringed as Silver's eyes lit up, giving him such a look of withering contempt that his legs gave out. He fell to the floor with a gasp.
If you ever speak over me again,
Silver said softly,
I will eat your heart.
Death threats from Silver were nothing new, and each time Gold had no doubt that the Lugia meant them. However, the deep-seated resentment in his tone carried the weight of a grudge. Back in the Ilex forest, Gold had divinely silenced Silver when the latter tried whispering subtle discouragements to his mind. Silver had gotten his voice back since then, but the humiliation of the rebuke only fueled his rage the more.
I told you already,
Silver continued.
I hate the League and Team Rocket, and I would not kill you until I made you useful against them. When I grabbed your head in Azalea, it was to implant visions of your other life, and put you on such a path. The other Gold was destined to disband Team Rocket and overthrow the League champion. You were to become like him.
The air around Silver seemed to darken and twist, almost intangibly, like wisps of smoke.
But you did not. And why? Because you reject him in favor of your spirit. Do you deny it?
Still afraid to speak and risk interrupting Silver by mistake, Gold merely shook his head. Silver bared his teeth.
Your faith is ill-founded,
he said, with a new earnestness that took Gold by surprise.
She will forsake you. When things are at their most desperate, and you plead for her to intervene and save you, no rainbow will break through the storm clouds.
The silver eyes flashed.
Do not mistake her past intercessions as your most desperate moments. They were not. Those are still to come.
Underfoot, Gold felt a slight tremor in the ground. For a moment, he thought it was his own body shaking, but a low rumble accompanied the quake. "What's going on?" he cried, gripping the wall behind him to keep on his feet. Silver stood immobile, seemingly unaffected by the shuddering of the ground.
Something that was avoidable,
he said, turning and walking towards the opposite wall.
Something that wouldn't have happened had you acted to fulfill the visions I sent.